building OS X apps with JavaScript. So I kind of came up with this talk back in September, October last year, and it was when they did WWDC, and Apple talked about JavaScript for automation. And quite shortly after this, this post, Building OS X Apps with JavaScript, was released, and actually September, there we go. And I thought, oh, this will make a brilliant Bristol JS talk. And this kind of goes through a bunch of examples. Here they are. Things like choose and display an image. User notifications for actually pinging system notifications, and pop-up buttons. And this talk mostly kind of went around talking about WWDC kind of talked about using JavaScript for automation, but you have the Objective-C bridge, and you can do a whole lot more. You can build actual native applications with this stuff. So I see these examples, I'm going through the code, I'm like, that's really cool. I'm gonna build I'm gonna build something like this. Like just kind of had this in my mind that like I can like combine these things to build something amazing. I'm sorry, but that's really not the case. That's not really what's happened. But I'm not going to let you down tonight. I should have plenty to talk about regardless. But I really had no idea what I was doing. And that's mostly down to none of this stuff is documented. At all. So fighting with it was the majority of my time spent on this. What I am going to talk about is building OS X apps with JavaScript, not exclusively native apps. So we'll talk about using the script editor to build native apps, Node.js, Node WebKit, or NWJS it's now called, and Alfred Workflows. So to kind of compare these, the script editor is what we're going to use for the Cocoa bridge. Cocoa, I don't know. And it's used for building truly native applications. And these are real native applications. It's not faking it or anything. It's a way to talk to the native system components and render them to the screen. It is truly native. And it's got really good performance as well. You get loads for free. So when you build apps in such a way, you'll have the differences between Yosemite and Lion in your applications natively. You don't need to code that in. You don't need to say, you know, this operating system should look like this one looks like this. Because you're using this stuff natively, you'll get loads of this stuff for free. That was that bit. And it's very well suited. It's very well suited for people who are interested in adding an element of pain and suffering into their lives, as I found out writing this talk. So you may guess that this talk's going to be a little bit ranty. So Node.js, or IO.js even, it's great for CLI applications. Its performance is really comparable to C and Java. Again, these slides are going to be up. There's a reference link down there. You can check it. I'll post it up to the meetup page. But it's really fast. It's had a lot of time spent on it around optimization. It's got really good native support, but through bindings. So it uses something called Node.jip to talk to the system, and it kind of abstracts lots away from you as well. So if you want to access the clipboard, for example, you're going to have native components compile regardless of what system you're on, and it will just work. And it's got a huge amount of libraries. There's 135,000 libraries on NPM currently. So there's absolutely loads there to pick from. In fact, that's the most amount of libraries for any programming language at all. And it's a bit weird with like a couple of the languages, but particularly Go. But dedicated libraries, it is the most that you can depend on. And it's supported on all desktop platforms, and even some mobile platforms. NWJS was formerly Node WebKit. They've since moved to IOJS, so they've just renamed to NWJS. And it's really good for building native-like applications. It's got good performance because it's built on Node. It's a really familiar workflow, so you'll be kind of working with CSS, JavaScript, and HTML to build your applications here. But it has some trouble when it comes to native bindings, as I found out kind of trying to access hardware and bits. It monkey patches Node.js a bit, and it means that stuff needs recompiling with their version of it, and it's all a bit, yeah. But does compile your applications down to OS X, Windows, or Linux. And lastly, Alfred. This is with the Workflows Power Pack. It's for building CLI-like applications, but for noobs. So a really nice interface which is CLI-esque, but easy to use. And it gives you some basic feedback as well. So kind of options you can just select from a list and things like that, which is quite nice. Sadly, it is a premium feature of Alfred. So you can only kind of ship your features to people who have bought the Power Pack. It's really easy to build stuff with. It's got a really nice drag and drop kind of really nice interface for building these stuff. But it's hard to distribute at the moment. I'm working on this though. And it's of course OS X only. So I'm going to build the same application, or I have built, sorry, the same application on all four of these platforms to kind of show you the differences. Now, we've essentially got kind of the input, user input, and the output, and in the middle we've got the business logic. And the business logic's going to be the same for every single one of our applications. So we're going to kind of use something off the shelf for that, because it really doesn't matter. I mean, that's kind of irrelevant for demonstrating the differences between these platforms. So for that, I'm going to use JS to Coffee. So if you don't know what CoffeeScript is, just in case, this CoffeeScript's different syntax to writing JavaScript. So CoffeeScript here compiles down to this JavaScript. It's not really, you don't really need to know CoffeeScript for this talk though, because all the stuff is written in JavaScript. Is just the application's job is to convert JavaScript to CoffeeScript. So let's get started. Let's talk about the script editor and Cocoa Bridge. Now, this is kind of the Hello World example application. So first, we're going to start off with importing Cocoa into our application. We'll then set a couple of variables about how this is going to look. So the style mask is going to take a tiled window, so a window. Of course, with Apple namings, everything's incredibly verbose. It's closable, because, you know, why wouldn't we use options? And you can miniaturize it down into the dock. It's 600 by 300, and then we configure our window here. Now I thought kind of that is the most disgusting method name. Wow. So I kind of was looking through these examples, and I thought, you know, they're you know, they're just the names of the components. I can kind of look up those bits, and you know, they're a bit horrible, but that's kind of the way things have been forever, and it's kind of built on the Objective-C stuff. So we can work through this. So we construct the window here. I won't really go into this too much because there's so much content to cover. We'll set the title, and we'll put the window at the front of the display and then center it on the screen. So if I grab this code and go into script editor, note that this will only work on Yosemite. So paste that in. We'll change over to JavaScript here, and it'll probably, there we go. And we'll launch it. So we've got a blank window with a custom title, and we can minimize it. and it's the size that we asked for it to be. And you know, this is kind of where I started out. I thought this is really, really exciting, until I realized it's not. It's horrible. So I'm going to show you the application, the JS to Coffee application. I'm certainly not going to live code it. It's not here. Here. Ah. Oh, it was there. That's all up there. So I'd love to be able to zoom this in. Nope, not going to happen. I can't. The editor doesn't allow me to. And I'd love to be able to open it in Sublime or something and use an editor of my choice, but this is actually a binary, so no. So we're stuck with this. So we've, huh? Ask Apple. Yeah, this gets saved as a binary into the project directory. It's partially readable, but if you try and edit it and then run it again, it's not going to work. So you got a couple of bits that I talked about before. Now this is where the pain really started. Apple kind of really expects you to do things in an Objective-C way, regardless of the fact that you're writing JavaScript. So you've got this method here, and it's called button click handler. And when we click our button, we're going to call that. So naturally, we add that to the app delegate. We don't have an app delegate, but it will bind it to it when it compiles. And I find that really a bit weird. But not as weird as this. This little pain point here, Objective-C unwrap, took me about 4 hours to find. If you don't unwrap this object, you just get its type inside the string. So we'll just say that it's an NS string, and that was painful. What I'm trying to say here is writing code without documentation really sucks, and the only way to debug this is to run the application and log to the console. You can't inspect the objects that you log like you do in Web Inspector. You have to log the specific thing. You can't even do any discovery. So the thing that I was planning on talking about, I've ended up just ranting about now. This was a horrible, horrible experience that hopefully I'll give you a better alternative to a bit later in this talk. But nonetheless, we set up our button here. We give it a title, a style, a target is the app delegate naturally, and the actual action. We got our text field and our output view. And then the rest of it's fairly similar to the previous example. So when we put in our JavaScript code here, we click JS to Coffee, and we get Coffee script out. Now all I'm doing here is using the shell command because business logic, we don't really care about this for the sake of these demos. So I'm loading my environment, echoing the result of this piped to JS to Coffee. So that's that. Thank God I can move on from that. Now, I kind of think what Apple had in mind for this stuff, the Cocoa Bridge, was this. In reality, it's more like this. Now, I put this picture up first, and I thought, what's a better metaphor? And I thought, a zip wire. Because you can really only go one way with this. You can only talk to it. You can't get stuff out of it. And then I thought, well, that's not 100% true. We've got returns. So I'm thinking, what else is a good metaphor for it? And then I noticed that this is perfect. Because we've got this crooked bridge here. But we've got a more crooked bridge here. It's a perfect metaphor. it's really no good yet, and I'm really looking forward to the day that they document it and then somebody abstracts it out to make it really nice. Right, meant to do the demos then, but whatever. So what else can we use? Let's go back here so I remember the order. Node.js. So if you're building an application that's for somebody who's comfortable with the command line, you might want to use Node.js. And one of these tabs. No, okay. So here I've created a fairly simple application. We require in a couple of libraries, fs to look at the file system, path to construct paths, commander to allow us to pass in options into our application, make directory p, which allows us to create directories when they don't yet exist, and finally JS to coffee. So you're not supposed to be there. So first we take the input. We're going to take that as the second argument. So the first argument is our actual application name, but we'll store that for now. And then we're going to use commander to say, I accept the following inputs. First we say, here's a version just to be friendly, but we say we also accept an output, and that is optionally a path. The square brackets say it's optional. And that's going to be our output path. That text here is just here for when you render out the help. And then we're going to process those so that they're available to use. We'll check that we actually have the input before continuing. And if not, we'll exit out the application. And if we do, we're going to read the file. One thing I will note here is there is no error handling. For the sake of the demo, I just wanted to keep it nice and skinny, so there is really no error handling in this, which is terribly bad practice. But and then we'll use the JS to coffee build method, and we'll pass in the data that we read from this read file, and extract the code from that. And then we want to do one of two things. We either want to output the result to standard out, or we want to write it to a file. So before I continue, I'll quickly show you how this works. So we've got my script in this directory, and it's a little bit of JavaScript here. And if we run a node on our index, first I'll do it without any arguments, and you'll see that we get our error saying that we must provide an input. So we'll give it our input, our myscript.js. And we get that output to standard out. So that's happening just here. Now, when we provide that -o option, we're going to continue down this chain. So now what we want to do is, if somebody provides -o, we want to assume this file name and path, and then put it in the same directory except as coffee. So we do that, we get that awesome output. We do that, and now you can see in our directory we've got myscript.coffee, and that's got our output. And then finally we want to be able to take our own custom output as well. So if we say we can say put it in a folder foo.coffee, and now in our foo folder is our foo coffee. So to do this, we need to make sure that the directory first exists, and then we just simply write the file with the fs command, and then log this out. Just say it's complete. Obviously, again, with no error handling, but yeah. But if we want a UI, we're going to want to use Node WebKit or Alfred. So Node WebKit is kind of a way of wrapping applications up with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, as I said before, but you have the context of the Node environment. So you have both window and process, which is a bit weird to think about because normally you're one or the other, but you have both, which is really cool. So I'll go into my nwjs directory here. So what we essentially have here is our index file. This is kind of our view for the application, and everything's in here just for purposes of this demonstration. Again, really bad practice, but I didn't want to kind of talk about dependencies and Bower and things like that, so I'm just requiring these files, jQuery, materialize, you know, a couple of styling bits from a CDN. But we also got a few little styles here. We haven't needed to do too much because we have these dependencies. And we'll put in our logo and an input. And then down at the bottom here, you'll see this line. We're doing a require. Now this isn't require.js. This is Node's native require method to pull in a library. If you wanted here, you could require in Node Express and run a web server from a web page, which is just mental. But it's pretty amazing as well. And we'll just say for the compile button that we have here, I just want you to get the value of the JavaScript, the input. We probably don't need a console log. And then I want to compile it using the exact same method here, JS to copy, build JavaScript, get the code out of that, and then push it into this output container. So the way that you build applications with NWJS is they provide you with a default application, and then one of these. There we go. And we go into that application and we call the app with our current directory. And that's going to build it for us, and it's going to launch this window here. To actually output into your distribution, it's just a slightly different command. But what we've got here is a relatively native application with its own icon even. And we can come in here and we can go function foo. Bar. And we get our output down here. But you can kind of tell that this is a website. Like it's still fairly obvious. I do kind of want to prove to you a little that you can go to quite a lot of effort to make these applications feel really slick. So this is an application built with Node WebKit called Popcorn Time, and this is essentially a website. You'd hardly know it, and this is kind of supported on Linux, Windows, and Mac OS X, as well as this little application here, which is a bit more simple for adding notes. So you can build really slick stuff with this. But the problem you're going to have is issues like this. So they've built their own Chrome to kind of match OS X's. Now in Yosemite, they made a change so that this plus button here now takes you into full screen. So if I go to an app like Chrome, yeah, it kind of gets rid of all the Chrome and things like that, whereas pre-Yosemite it just did what it did there and made it big. So they've kind of mimicked the OS here, and they're losing some of the things that the OS gives you for free, which sucks a little bit. But it's a really good compromise if you want to build something simple. We've built a couple of tools for clients with this stuff. It's worked really well for us. And lastly, I'll talk about Alfred. So Alfred allows you to build these little workflows with the Power Pack. So I've built a little JS2C package, and it's very much a drag and drop environment. So I can take that away. I can come in here and I can say my trigger is probably shouldn't have deleted that. I'm not sure what that was. It was a keyword, was it? Yeah, my trigger is a keyword, and it takes a keyword of JS2C. We don't need an argument, so we'll get rid of this. And we'll say, you know, this should respond to the UI with JS2C. We then just simply map that up to this bash command. This bash command, again, loads in my environment, but then loads in this index.js file with Node. It's more or less the same index.js file that you saw before with some bits removed. We'll go into our workflow file, and you'll see this here. I can load it in. And it's literally this code. It requires in what we need. This time, we want to put into the clipboard due to the nature kind of how we're consuming it. So we're requiring copy paste. We'll then build what's in the clipboard and then put that back into the clipboard. So if we do function foo, we take this again, we copy that into the clipboard, and then we run JS2C, and then we can just paste, and it's just there. I think that put it onto a different screen. I've had problems with this multi-screen before, but you can also say perform push notification on completion. So we might, yeah, no, that's that up. I don't know. I think it's put it onto a different screen. But yeah, really nice to consume, and something I've been working on for a little while is a website called flow.lab.io. It's a package manager for Alfred Workflows. So you can come on, you can kind of install the JS to Coffee stuff, HTML to HAML, like IMDb search stuff, and things you can do with this that are nicer than using a CLI is you can say like, right, flow, and it will pull down this list from this site, and then you can just select stuff to install. So I want to install YouTube, and I just hit that, and it downloads and it installs that into Alfred Workflow. So I need to quit out of that, but there's not YouTube. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. What was it? So the way kind of we go about doing that is when you want to give feedback to the user, this is that Alfred Workflow example. So this is Ruby, but it still very much applies to the JavaScript stuff. You simply just construct an XML response with the structured data that they provide. You need to say, here's our list of items, it has this title and these IDs and this icon and again this title here. You just can push stuff back to the user, move up the chain, and kind of add on things. No, let me go right. No. Okay. So a little bit of further reading. The demos that I've showed you today are up on this repository. Again, I'll post these slides up to the meetup page so that you can kind of look all through them and the links and whatnot. The post that I showed you before is at this link. JXA Cookbook is starting to construct a bit of documentation around this stuff. I found it a little too late, but it's mostly around the automation stuff. The actual OSX, the Cocoa Bridge, it covers really very little of that. But Apple's documentation on the automation stuff, sorry, not their documentation, their talk is available at this link. Again, I'll post this all up. But one more thing in traditional Apple style. What about Swift? So when Swift kind of came out, everyone was like, Swift, is it like JavaScript? It looks like JavaScript. Surely it's like JavaScript. Swift is not like JavaScript. Swift is much better than JavaScript. JavaScript is everywhere, which makes it awesome because you can use it no matter, in the browser and kind of in Node and on hardware and all sorts. But as an actual language, Swift is considerably more sophisticated. I started learning Swift yesterday, but it went exceptionally well. So live coding, let's give this a go. Let's see how this goes. I have like the most minute amount of notes on here just to make sure everything goes smoothly. Last time I live coded, it didn't go too well. So let's open Xcode. We'll start a new project. Nope, we don't want to do that. We want to start a new project, not file. And we'll do it as a OSX application. I'll call it demo. That'll do. That's probably alright, isn't it? Look good? Yeah? Cool. And we'll put it here in our developer directory too. Okay. So when you create a new project, it gives you a couple of things to start with. You've got your view controller and your actual view. And when I run this application, you'll see it really does nothing. It's a bit similar to kind of the hello world example that I showed you before. You just have this resizable window. So we need a couple of bits in there, a couple of UI components. So let's get a text view. It took me about 3 guesses to pick the right text view, but this is the one I want because it supports multiple lines. And when you drag stuff out, it will give you these little guidelines. And I'm just going to stick that one up there for now in the top left corner. Because we're also going to need a button. And I'll drag that out and I'll put that down in this bottom left corner. Now we'll drag this out so it uses up the whole of the application window. Those guidelines are really helpful. And we'll tell it this is JS2 coffee. So if I hit this button here, it will split my pane so that I can see what I've got selected in my storyboard and its associated view controller. And we got a couple of methods in here to begin with. We've got this method, which I have no idea what it does, but that can go. I know we don't need it. So we need to be able to access these objects to begin with. So let me free up a little bit of space on my screen here. Now, the way to do this in Xcode, who here is familiar with Xcode? Alright, this won't seem too weird to you lot. For me, this was just like, what the fuck? You drag and drop it. Like that. You can hold control, drag it over, and it's like, there is no reference to this thing other than like in metadata somewhere deep in like a plist file. So where you normally say, I want to grab something by its target, none of that. So we drag that over, and we're just going to want to be able to reference this, so it's an outlet connection. And that is not the right one. I want to be inside that. So that was the scroll view. I go inside it to actually get the text view. We'll call this code. Now that just puts this here. Now all this IB outlet thing does is gives us this reference. It tells it that we know what this is somewhere in our stack. I have no idea where. But it means that we have this little ball here to show us, this thing's connected to these things. We'll do the same again for this button. We'll drag this over here, except this time I don't want a reference to the button. I want to perform an action. So our connection, we will just say convert. Why not? And we'll pass in the actual button as the argument. So this produces this function called convert, which takes one argument of the sender, which is the NS button. This is the type. And probably make this a bit bigger. Does anybody know how I know I set in Xcode? It's not Apple Plus. Oh, fail Apple. It doesn't even support the multi-touch zoom. I don't know. Right. So the first thing, this was a little bit of a gotcha for me. The first thing that we need to do is to disable substitutions. So at the moment, you'll see if I run this application, compile. If I run this application and I put in a quote here and then space, it subtly converted that. Oh, that's no good. But you can see there. See that little snap? That's no good because CoffeeScript is gonna complain about that. It's not gonna like that. So we'll say for our code, we need to disable automatic quote. Well done. 10 points for Alex. Right, we'll set that to false, and that will stop that from happening. And then this method's being called at the moment. So if we do nslog, we can just say foo. Can't type. That'll do. Why not? And when we run this, check that's working. Good, we're getting foos out. All right. Progress. So we want to actually compile the CoffeeScript here. So first we need to actually get the input. So our input is going to be the code string value. Now when we call string on this, it's going to give us this weird object called anyObject. So we need to unwrap that with this exclamation mark here. And then, one thing I am going to do is there is a small amount of code that I stole from Stack Overflow. Called exec command. So exec command takes a command with arguments, and then it performs an actual system task with that and returns the output. So fairly boring. And we're going to call, we'll take the output. Oh, why are you doing that? Such live coding. No, leave it be. All right. We'll call exec command, but we'll call the same path as earlier. User local bin zsh. We want to call it with 2 arguments. First, we'll call js2coffee.sh as the first argument, and then we'll call our input, or we'll pass our input in as another argument. Now this is an optional argument here, so we just need to say args as well. Hopefully these errors will go away. Go away! Go away! What have I done wrong? I don't know. What's output? Output. Oh yeah. Let's cast that to a variable. Why not? Ah. There we go. Better. And then we'll say our code string is equal to the output. Cool. Now all we need to do is then create this little script here. So again, you probably want to include this in your application. At the moment, I've got on the root of my system. If anyone knows how to do that better, let me know. I don't know yet. But I'll create this js2coffee.sh, and it's a little script. It's and we'll echo the first argument, and we'll pipe that to js2coffee. Cool. Oh. No, that's only on my work computer. Sad times. Let's sudo that. It's really exciting. He's having a good time. Echo argument number $1 $1 stupid Vim configuration. Vim's awesome, but this sucks. I don't know why it does that. Ooh. Wait. And let's really hope this runs. Scary. Function foo. This is the limit of my JavaScript knowledge here. Yep. Features for free. Yeah, it works. Brilliant. And then one final, very last thing is this window is a set size here. So we're going to rescale it, and we're going to end up with these components, and they're going to stay the same size, and we can't do that, and that's horrible. So one tiny last thing is let's add some constraints to this to make it a slightly nicer app. So if you hold down Control, and then you drag from here to the outer container, we can say attach that to the trailing space here. We'll do that for the top, we'll do that for the left, and then we'll do the same for the button. Left, right, bottom, and then we'll say for the button, I want you the same distance as you are from there. So now we've got a bunch of constraints in place, and magic happens, and we can resize our window, and it's all nice. So yeah, basically what I learned from this is don't try and build apps with JavaScript. Certainly not native ones. Swift is really awesome, so I encourage you all to learn it, and if there's any questions, please ask them now. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a question about Node WebKit. So if they're using IO.js now instead of Node.js, does that mean you have to install IO.js? Or?
No. So the application has V8 or V8, yeah, has it all compiled inside. So when you ship your application, it ships with Node and things like that. You just have a binary. As far as the user's concerned, it's just an app.
Yeah. So you could just npm install that now, working with Node normally. You wouldn't have to wait.
You don't need npm install anything. You download that, run that little command, it will inject it in, and then you can ship that app.
WebKit, does that come as a Node module or?
No, WebKit is not.
Yes.
No, that's a C thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to learn that.
Yeah, I think the IO.js stuff, that's all really, I think, going to go away. Something we talked about at the Node school was how IO.js is a political fork. It's the end goal is that ends up back in Node. It was to provoke a conversation.